David kept glancing at the girl through the rearview mirror as the truck rumbled down the empty highway. She sat curled up in the passenger seat, clutching the carved eagle as if it were the only thing holding her together. The desert sun cut harshly across her face, revealing bruises and dust that looked like she had been wandering for days. David didn't know her name, her story, or where she belonged, but something inside him tightened with every silent minute that passed. He had lost everything in his own world, yet this child looked like she had never had anything to begin with. When they reached a small diner on the outskirts of a forgotten town, David carried her inside. The staff stared. She looked half-starved, dirty, and scared, but David ignored the whispers. He ordered soup, bread, and a glass of water, placing them gently before her. At first, she didn't touch anything. Her eyes darted around, cautious, expecting danger. Slowly, she dipped her spoon into the soup and took a small sip. Then a bigger one. Within minutes, she was eating like she hadn't tasted food in weeks. Watching her devour the meal, David felt something warm stir inside him, protectiveness, the kind he hadn't felt in a long time. Back in the truck, David tried again to speak to her. "My name is David. Can you tell me yours?" But she stayed quiet, eyes fixed on the passing desert, hands wrapped around the eagle. It was carved beautifully, Apache craftsmanship, David recognized from local markets. That meant she wasn't just lost, she belonged to a tribe somewhere out here. The thought made him even more nervous. Whoever her family was, they were probably desperate, searching, fearing the worst. But how would he find them before something else did? The desert was dangerous, and he couldn't leave her alone for even a second. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting Arizona in deep oranges and purples, David found himself pulling into a small motel. He paid for a room and led the girl inside. She hesitated before stepping over the threshold, as if unfamiliar with the idea of safety. David handed her a clean towel and motioned toward the bathroom. "You can wash up if you want." She didn't speak, but she obeyed, disappearing behind the door. While she showered, David sat on the motel bed, rubbing his temples. Hours ago he had been drowning in his own misery. Now he was responsible for a terrified, starving child. Fate had a strange way of redirecting a man. When she came out, wearing the oversized t-shirt David bought from the motel lobby, she looked smaller but somehow lighter. Clean hair, clean face, wide scared eyes. She walked toward him, holding the eagle, and sat on the edge of the bed. David sighed softly. "You're safe here. I promise." The promise felt heavy. He had nothing, no money, no home, no stability. Yet somehow, this child seemed to trust him more than she trusted the world outside. She lay down and curled up, falling asleep instantly as if her body finally allowed itself to rest. David didn't sleep much. He sat by the window, watching cars pass quietly through the night, thinking about what tomorrow would bring. He had no idea how to contact Apache authorities or how to even identify which reservation she belonged to. And the fear that something or someone had driven her away lingered in his mind like a storm waiting to break. There was a reason she had been alone. People don't end up barefoot and starving in the middle of the desert without tragedy behind them. He knew tomorrow would bring answers, whether he was ready or not. Before dawn, David packed up and carried the sleeping girl to the truck. As he buckled her in, the carved eagle slipped from her hand, revealing an etched symbol burned into the wood. David recognized it. Instantly, San Carlos Apache. At least now he had a direction. He started the engine and drove toward the reservation. The girl stirred, opening her eyes halfway, then drifted back to sleep. David glanced at her and exhaled slowly. He might have lost his fortune, his reputation, his life's work, but maybe this journey, this child, this unexpected purpose was the beginning of something far greater than anything he'd built before. David stood frozen in the doorway, unable to move as the three Apache women stepped onto the porch. Their faces were lined with exhaustion, eyes swollen from sleepless nights, clothes dusty from miles of searching. The eldest woman clutched a woven pouch to her chest, the kind used in prayers and ceremonies. David could feel the weight of their fear, their hope, their desperation all at once. Before he could invite them inside, the tiniest sound broke the tense silence, the creak of the floorboards behind him. The little girl peeked out, her wooden eagle tucked firmly under her arm. The moment the women saw her, their expressions shattered into raw emotion. One fell to her knees, covering her mouth as tears streamed down her cheeks. Another whispered prayers under her breath in Apache, thanking the Creator for sparing the child. The little girl hesitated, unsure, then slowly walked toward them. The eldest woman opened her arms shakily, terrified the child might disappear again. When the girl finally stepped into her embrace, a collective sigh filled the room, relief, gratitude, and the end of a nightmare they had been living for days. David stepped aside, letting them gather inside the small living room. The women explained everything in soft, trembling voices. The girl had wandered off during a big family event, a celebration with music, dancing, and children running freely. No one noticed she slipped away until sunset. By then, the desert had swallowed her small footsteps. They searched for days, calling her name across canyons and dry riverbeds. Rangers were alerted, volunteers arrived, but each day passed with no sign of her. Hope faded with each cold night. They feared wild animals, traffickers, or the merciless heat had claimed her. When David told them he had found her near an abandoned gas station, starving, barefoot, barely able to stand, the women looked at him with a mixture of heartbreak and gratitude. They listened as he explained how she wouldn't speak, how she clung to the wooden eagle, how she ate like she hadn't tasted food in days. The eldest woman gently placed her hand on the child's back and whispered, "She went through the desert alone, and she survived." There was pride in her voice, but also deep sorrow. David realized then that survival was a blessing, but also a story of pain she carried silently. After settling the girl on the couch with her family, one of the women approached David. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "We feared we had lost her forever. You saved her life." David tried to deny it, brushing off the praise, but she held his hand firmly. "Out here, in our land, children are sacred. Losing one is like losing a piece of our soul." Her eyes glistened as she added, "You didn't just protect her. You protected us. Our whole family." David felt something stir inside him, something warm and unfamiliar, something he thought he had lost the day his fortune vanished. While the women prepared to take the girl home, the child suddenly ran back to David and wrapped her tiny arms around his leg. She buried her face in his jeans, refusing to let go. The women froze, watching in surprise. David knelt, brushing her hair gently. "You're safe now," he whispered. The girl loosened her grip but didn't release the carved eagle she held. The eldest woman explained softly, "She doesn't bond with strangers easily. But she bonded with you because you were the one who found her when she was most afraid." The words sank deep into David's heart, heavier than any wealth he once possessed. As they prepared to leave, the girl lifted her carved eagle and pressed it into David's hands. He shook his head. "Sweetheart, this belongs to you." But the girl insisted, pushing it closer to his chest. One of the women smiled. "In our culture, giving someone a carved eagle is a gift of honor. She sees you as someone who brought her back to life." David's eyes stung. He had lost his company, his money, his home, but this small gesture, this fragile child's trust, felt like something money could never buy. As their truck drove away with the girl waving from the backseat, David realized something profound. Standing alone on his porch, clutching the wooden eagle, he felt, for the first time in months, purpose. Not the kind built from money, business, or success, but the kind that comes from helping someone when you have nothing left to give. He looked at the horizon, the sun dipping behind the desert mountains, and felt a quiet strength return to him. Losing everything had forced him to see what truly mattered. That little girl, her bravery, her trust, it all reminded him that life wasn't about wealth. It was about impact. And sometimes, you have to lose everything, just to finally find yourself.